The gymnasium buzzed with noise, the screech of sneakers, the hiss of whispers, the occasional loud burst of mocking laughter. At the center of the worn-out basketball court, under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, Jaden Carter, a slim black boy in faded jeans and a plain white tee, stood alone. Around him, a wall of teenagers circled like vultures. Phones were out, cameras recording every awkward twitch. Someone from the back snorted loudly. "What's he even trying to do?" "Man, sit down," shouted another, laughing. Jaden's palms sweated. His heart raced as he faced the sea of sneering faces. His sneakers scuffed nervously against the glossy wood floor. But deep inside, buried under the fear and humiliation, a tiny ember burned, a secret he had never dared to reveal. He glanced up at the judges' table, where Coach Peterson, a stern-faced white man with folded arms, leaned back in his chair, already looking unimpressed. This was supposed to be just a small talent tryout for the school's annual showcase. A chance, a risk, a trap. The air felt thicker by the second. Jaden could hear his own breathing louder than the jeers. His knees locked for a moment, the old instinct to run rising in his chest. A girl in the crowd, Madison Green, smirked and whispered just loud enough for others to hear. "Poor kid thinks he's some kind of star." Jaden shut his eyes. For 1 second, he pictured something else. Himself on a real stage. Music pounding through his veins. Movement flowing through his body like electricity. The rhythm wasn't just in him. It was him. Slowly, he opened his eyes, a different look hardening across his face. He pulled his cap lower over his forehead. And then, he stepped forward. The crowd leaned in, ready to laugh, ready to record his failure. But they didn't know. They couldn't know. Not yet. What was Jaden about to unleash? Would he crumble, or leave them speechless? Before we continue, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button for more inspiring stories. Long before the gymnasium and the mocking faces, Jaden Carter had fought battles no one had ever seen. He grew up in a tiny, two-bedroom apartment in the outskirts of Cleveland, Ohio, where the sound of sirens was as common as the ticking of a clock. His mother, Danielle Carter, worked 2 minimum-wage jobs at the diner during the day and at the hospital at night. His father? Just a faded photograph tucked inside an old drawer. From an early age, Jaden knew better than to ask for things. Birthday parties were luxuries. New shoes were rare gifts from secondhand stores. Even basic things, school trips, new notebooks, were dreams, not rights. Loneliness wrapped around him like a second skin. At school, Jaden blended into the background. Teachers often overlooked him. Classmates only noticed him with tease. He was the skinny kid, the weirdo, the nobody. But Jaden had a secret sanctuary, the tiny storage room attached to their apartment. Inside that cramped space, he built a world of rhythm and escape. An old, broken radio his uncle had thrown away became his treasure. Every night after homework, when his mother was at work and the world was silent, Jaden would slip into the storage room, press play on a radio, and dance. He taught himself. No classes, no trainers, no expensive sneakers, just raw passion, just movement, just survival. Some nights, the music was loud and fierce. He'd practice spins, footwork, pops, and locks until sweat dripped from his nose and he collapsed on the floor, breathless. Other nights, it was soft melodies, and Jaden would move like a whisper, fluid and soulful. He studied every music video he could find at the public library. Michael Jackson, Usher, Chris Brown. He borrowed old DVDs, worn out at the edges, rewinding them until the players stuttered. When his body hurt, when his legs cramped, he still danced. Because every move he mastered felt like reclaiming a piece of dignity the world had tried to take away. One bitter winter evening, as snow battered the cracked window panes, Jaden overheard a conversation between his mother and their landlord, Mr. Howard, downstairs. "Danielle, I'm sorry, but if you can't pay by the end of the month, you'll have to find another place," Mr. Howard said, voice cold and final. Jaden pressed his forehead against the wall, tears burning his eyes. The helplessness was a heavy, suffocating thing. But the next morning, he danced harder. The energy shifted. Gasps replaced laughter. Whispers of "whoa, and is that really Jaden?" rippled through the crowd. By the time he launched into his grand finale, a gravity-defying sequence of spins and freezes, the entire gymnasium was dead silent, eyes wide, mouths hanging open. And when the music cut off with a sharp, final beat, Jaden struck a final pose, chest heaving, sweat dripping. There was a beat of stunned silence. Then, thunderous applause exploded. Students were on their feet. Teachers clapped hesitantly at first, then more genuinely. Even Coach Mitchell gave a low, appreciative whistle. Jaden stood there, blinking in disbelief, chest heaving. For the first time, the crowd wasn't laughing at him. They were looking up to him. He scanned the sea of faces and caught Savannah's stunned expression, her phone half raised, recording without even realizing it. But among all the applause and stunned faces, Jaden noticed something else. In the corner, near the judge's table, Mr. Carmichael, the event organizer, was whispering furiously to Principal Reynolds. Their expressions were tight, suspicious. Jaden's stomach dropped slightly. Something wasn't right. The success he had just tasted, it might not be the end of the story. It might just be the beginning of a bigger fight. As the roaring applause faded into scattered conversations, Jaden made his way backstage, wiping sweat from his brow. He felt lighter, freer, more alive than ever before. But the feeling didn't last long. A voice called out, sharp and official. "Jaden Carter, please come with us." Jaden turned to see Mr. Carmichael and Principal Reynolds standing stiffly by the side door. Behind them, two members of the school board, Ms. Evelyn Parker and Mr. Harold Bennett, hovered with grim faces. Confused but obedient, Jaden followed. They led him down a narrow, dimly lit hallway into a small office. The walls were lined with dusty trophies and faded photographs. Principal Reynolds closed the door behind him with a soft click. "Jaden," Mr. Carmichael started, his tone too sweet to be genuine, "we need to discuss your performance tonight." Jaden frowned. "What about it?" Ms. Parker spoke next, voice clipped. "We have concerns that your performance may not have been entirely your own." Jaden's heart dropped. "What do you mean?" "I danced." "That's it." Mr. Bennett leaned forward, fingers steepled. "We received reports that you may have used pre-recorded professional choreography assistants, or enhanced footage." Jaden blinked, stunned. "You're accusing me of cheating? In a live dance performance?" he said, voice rising. "Lower your tone," Principal Reynolds snapped. Jaden swallowed hard. The unfairness stung worse than any laughter ever could. "I practiced for years," Jaden said, voice shaking. "Nobody helped me. Nobody even believed in me." Mr. Carmichael exchanged a look with the others. "Regardless, we must investigate," he said smoothly. "Effective immediately, we're suspending you from participating in the final competition round." "You're punishing me because I'm better than you expected," Jaden said bitterly. No one answered. They didn't have to. The decision had been made before he'd even stepped onto the stage. As Jaden walked out of the office, his fists clenched at his sides, he passed by groups of students still buzzing about his performance. None of them knew what was happening behind closed doors. Later that night, sitting on his front porch under the cold Cleveland sky, Jaden replayed the meeting over and over in his head. It wasn't just tonight. He remembered the countless times teachers had underestimated him because of where he lived, the times he'd been passed over for leadership roles, the warnings he'd received about being too ambitious for someone like him. A slow, bitter realization settled in. They didn't just doubt him. They didn't want him to win. They couldn't handle the idea that a black boy from the wrong side of town could outshine the sons and daughters of doctors, lawyers, and board members. The system wasn't broken. It was built this way. The next morning at school, the rumor started. Some students whispered that Jaden had cheated. Others defended him, sharing shaky cell phone videos of his dance across social media. By lunch, a shaky balance of belief and doubt hung over the cafeteria. Savannah approached his table cautiously, twisting a bracelet around her wrist. "Hey, Jaden," she said awkwardly. I posted your video online. It's blowing up. People are saying you're insane, like professional level. Jaden shrugged. Doesn't matter, he muttered. They're still calling me a cheater. Savannah hesitated, then leaned in. You know, she said quietly, my dad's on the school board. I heard them talking last night after the show. They don't have any proof. They're just scared you'll make them look bad. Jaden looked up sharply. Why are you telling me this? Savannah shifted uncomfortably. Because it's wrong, she said simply. And not everyone here wants to see you crushed. For the first time in a long time, Jaden felt a flicker of hope. Maybe not everyone had bought into the lie. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't completely alone in this fight. That afternoon, as Jaden sat slumped in the near-empty dance studio, tapping his sneakers rhythmically against the polished wood floor, the door creaked open. He didn't bother looking up. If you're here to tell me I'm suspended too, save it, he muttered bitterly. A deep, calm voice answered. Actually, I'm here because I saw something extraordinary last night. Jaden glanced up sharply. Standing there was Mr. Elijah Brooks, the school's janitor, and an ex-professional dancer who had once performed with the Harlem Dance Theater before an injury forced him into early retirement. He was a legend that no one ever really talked about anymore. I've been watching you, Jaden, Mr. Brooks said, stepping inside. You move like someone who carries a storm inside, but you've been dancing alone for too long. Jaden blinked, confused. What do you mean? Mr. Brooks dropped a battered duffel bag onto the floor. Inside were old dance shoes, a tattered metronome, and a few well-worn tapes. The system wasn't built for boys like us to shine without a fight, Mr. Brooks said, lowering himself onto the bench beside Jaden. But that doesn't mean you let them snuff you out. Jaden swallowed hard. All the walls he'd built around himself, the anger, the bitterness, the exhaustion, felt fragile against Mr. Brooks' steady gaze. They're setting up a monitored re-audition next week, Mr. Brooks continued. Fair judges. No accusations. No favors. Jaden's heart hammered in his chest. But what if they find a way to sabotage it too? He asked, voice barely a whisper. Mr. Brooks smiled slightly. Then we make it impossible for them to deny you. For the next 6 days, Mr. Brooks became Jaden's shadow. They trained before sunrise and long after the last bell rang. Every movement was dissected, every step refined, every hesitation burned away. You're not just dancing, Mr. Brooks said during one late-night session. You're telling a story only you can tell. Make them feel it. Jaden pushed harder than he ever had. His muscles ached. His toes blistered. His breath often came in ragged gasps. But with every drop of sweat, he shed the fear that had clung to him like chains. One evening, as they finished their final run-through, Mr. Brooks clapped Jaden on the back. You're ready, he said simply. Jaden nodded, a fire igniting deep in his chest. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was fighting alone. He had a mentor who believed in him. He had a chance to clear his name. And above all, he had a truth inside him no one could ever steal. Tomorrow, it wouldn't just be about winning. It would be about taking back what they tried to take from him. The morning of the supervised re-audition, the gymnasium buzzed with a different kind of energy. Gone were the jeering classmates. Gone were the biased judges. This time, a panel of neutral, external adjudicators sat at a long table, clipboards poised, faces unreadable. The principal, Mr. Carter, stood stiffly near the entrance, forced to allow the event but clearly hoping Jaden would fail. Jaden entered, dressed in plain black athletic wear, his face set in quiet determination. Mr. Brooks gave him a nod from the sidelines, arms folded, his presence like an anchor. No cheering crowd, no mocking laughs, only silence. The head judge, Ms. Evelyn Matthews, looked over her glasses at Jaden. Whenever you're ready, she said coolly. Jaden stepped into the center of the polished wooden floor. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deep. In his mind, he wasn't in a hostile gymnasium. He was on a grand stage, under lights that warmed his skin, in front of people waiting to be moved. When the music began, a simple drumbeat echoing like a heartbeat, Jaden let everything else fall away. He started slow, measured, controlled, each movement precise, almost defiant in its confidence. The judges scribbled notes, their faces still blank. Mr. Carter watched, arms crossed tightly, a muscle twitching in his jaw. But then, something changed. Jaden's body became an instrument of raw emotion. His arms cut through the air like poetry. His feet tapped intricate rhythms into the floor, faster, sharper, more alive than anything he'd ever shown before. Every spin, every pop, every fluid glide told a story of humiliation, struggle, silent resilience, and fierce hope. The gym, once buzzing, now held its collective breath. Even the teachers who had dismissed him before leaned forward unconsciously, drawn into the performance. The other students, who had been allowed to quietly observe from the bleachers, looked stunned. Some whispered to each other. Some simply watched, mouths slightly open. Mr. Brooks smiled quietly in the corner, his arms finally dropping to his sides. He knew this wasn't just dancing. It was a declaration. I'm here. I'm worthy. You cannot erase me. As the final beat echoed in his silence, Jaden struck his ending pose, chest forward, head high, eyes blazing. For a few heartbeats, no one moved. Then, scattered claps, growing louder, building into full-fledged applause. Even Ms. Matthews allowed herself a slight nod of appreciation, scribbling something quickly onto her evaluation form. Mr. Carter's face had drained of color. He opened his mouth as if to object, but there was nothing he could say. It was undeniable. Jaden had passed. Not just passed. He had commanded the stage. On their terms. Under their scrutiny. Without shortcuts, without sympathy. Pure, unfiltered excellence. As Jaden walked off the floor, breathing heavily but smiling for the first time in weeks, Mr. Brooks met him halfway. Told you, he said gruffly, clapping him on the shoulder. No one can cage a storm once it's ready to break free. Jaden grinned, feeling lighter than he had in years. He hadn't just redeemed himself. He had rewritten the narrative they had tried to bury him under. And he was just getting started. Word of Jaden's stunning performance spread across the school like wildfire. By lunchtime, videos had already circulated among students, teachers, and even parents. The clip of Jaden dancing, defying every expectation, was being shared not as a joke this time, but as a moment of pride. But the story didn't stop there. 2 days later, an emergency school board meeting was called. Parents demanded answers. Community leaders who had long suspected racial and class biases within the school showed up in force. Local news outlets picked up the story, framing it as small-town student overcomes bias with extraordinary talent. Inside the crowded auditorium, Jaden sat next to Mr. Brooks and his mother, Vanessa Turner, a woman whose strength shone through the exhaustion in her eyes. At the front of the room, the school board members shifted uncomfortably behind their long table. Mr. Carter stood at the podium, his voice strained. The recent incident has been misunderstood, he began, but was immediately drowned out by boos from the gathered crowd. Ms. Evelyn Matthews, now serving as a neutral observer, stepped forward. Misunderstood, she repeated sharply, holding up the official adjudication report. This young man was targeted based on personal biases, not objective standards. His supervised performance left no room for doubt. The audience erupted in applause. Jaden's heart pounded. Was this really happening? For so long, injustice had been something silent, something you were forced to swallow quietly. But now, it was laid bare for everyone to see. Then, the revelations deepened. Parents stood up one by one, sharing their own children's experiences, unfair grading, exclusion from advanced programs, punishments harsher for kids from certain neighborhoods. The pattern was unmistakable. A slow tide of hidden injustice now flooded the room, undeniable in its weight. The board members had no choice but to act. In front of hundreds, they announced a full independent investigation into discriminatory practices within the school. Immediate suspension of Mr. Carter pending review. New mandatory bias training for all faculty and staff. Creation of an arts scholarship fund for underprivileged students, named after Jaden Turner. Jaden sat frozen for a moment. His name, not a source of pity, not a whisper of shame, but a beacon. Mr. Brooks leaned over, his voice low but fierce. You didn't just dance today, kid. You kicked the first domino. Outside, the community gathered around Jaden. Old neighbors who had once pitted his family now clapped him on the back. Kids who had sneered now looked at him with wide-eyed respect. Ms. Matthews pulled him aside and handed him a business card. "If you ever want to audition for a national program," she said, smiling warmly, "you call me." "Doors are open now, Jaden." His mother hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You show them who you are, baby," she whispered, "and you showed them who they need to become." Jaden looked around, taking in a sea of faces, black, white, brown, all united for once. Not because someone told them to, because they had seen the truth, and they couldn't unsee it. As the sun set behind the rows of small houses and old oak trees, Jaden stood taller. The system that had tried to break him was now bending toward change. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't happen overnight. But a crack had formed, and through that crack, a new light was pouring in. A light he had created with nothing more than his courage, his persistence, and his belief that he was more than what they said he was. Much more. 3 years later, the auditorium was once again filled, but this time, the energy was different. Banners hung from walls. Turner Arts Festival, celebrating talent beyond barriers. Jaden stood backstage, wearing a sleek black jacket embroidered with silver patterns. He was no longer just the kid who shocked the school. He was a mentor, a symbol, a bridge. The community had changed, not perfectly, but meaningfully. More scholarships had been awarded. More students of diverse backgrounds had been admitted into honors programs. Teachers like Mr. Brooks were now department heads, leading reforms that once seemed impossible. Mr. Carter? He had been formally dismissed, a clear message that injustice, when exposed, would not be tolerated. Tonight, Jaden wasn't here to prove himself. He was here to open doors for others. As the spotlight bathed the stage, he spoke. "I used to think my dreams were something to hide," he said, voice steady and rich with emotion. "But dreams aren't meant to be hidden. They're meant to be shared, to be fought for, and sometimes to shake the world awake." The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Tears glistened in the eyes of parents, teachers, students, some who had once doubted, now cheering him on. Later that night, sitting quietly at the edge of the stage, Jaden gazed out over the empty chairs. He thought about that first humiliating performance, about the laughter, the judgment, the loneliness. And he thought about the fire it had lit inside him, a fire that refused to go out. He realized something deep and powerful. Unseen potential is not a weakness. It is a seed, and when the world laughs, doubts, or tries to crush it, that seed doesn't die. It waits, it grows, and one day it becomes something unstoppable. To everyone watching his story now, never let someone else define your worth. Nurture the gifts no one else sees. Stand up, even when your voice shakes. Because sometimes the battle you're fighting isn't just for you. It's for everyone coming after you. Where are you watching from? Have you ever felt underestimated? Share your story below. Let's inspire each other. And don't forget to like, comment, and share this story so that others can be reminded. Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it starts with a whisper and ends with a roar.